Hi everyone, how are you? Good? You all got all your candy? It's good, okay. My name's Amy, I'm one of the co-chairs of the Woodstock Democratic Committee, and on behalf of our whole committee and the forum team, we welcome you tonight. Thank you for coming out. I guess the weather held, which is terrific. But we're really glad you're here. And in these hard times in America, it's really wonderful to see that there are people who care enough about who is going to get elected that they would come out of a Thursday evening and learn more about the candidates. And really, our committee really appreciates that engagement. So I just want to underscore that there's been some incorrect information circulating about where the venues are, when the forums are going to be at the venues, blah, blah, blah. It's hard to get all that straight, and sometimes the venues change after we get all the promotional material printed up, which happened. So we can't say it enough. If you would be so kind as to sign up for our newsletter, we will always send you correct and up-to-date information about everything, and it's got lots more in it that's important to know as well. So there's a mailing list back there. It doesn't get circulated to anyone except Woodstock Democrats, okay? So totally not shared. So it'd be great to have you on it. I also want to just let you know that all of this costs some money for us to do, and so we have fundraisers throughout the year, and we have our first fundraiser coming up, and it's a fun one. It's birding. My husband is leading a birding trip. He's an expert birder, and it is early. I'm sorry, it's at 8 a.m. But it's June 7th, and you can go to our website, www.woodstockdems.org, and sign up for it, or email me, whatever you'd like to do. But please come. It's fun, it's educational, and we always need the support to do all the work we do and do more of it. All that having been said, my specs on. So, this forum is part of our ongoing efforts to give voters as much information as possible in order to make the most informed choices as possible. Welcome to the first of our this is the second of our 4 candidate forums presented by the Woodstock Democratic Committee. We have tried to make these forums as factual and unbiased as possible. Our moderator, who you'll meet in a minute, is not from Woodstock, and she has no stake in our elections or in any of the issues we will discuss during these sessions. She's independent and will moderate the forums as she sees fit. The WDC will have no input during the sessions. In order to know which issues and questions are most important to you, we conducted an online survey of Woodstock voters and have factored your responses into the content and format of the forums. By the way, that's another reason to sign up on our email list, because you can then be part of surveys that we conduct. You will have a chance to meet the candidates and ask questions of them personally at the WDC's Meet and Greet on June 22nd. So that'll be here. It's incorrect in some of the promotional materials, but it will be here on June 22nd. We have not shared any of the questions we're asking with the candidates or their campaigns. We've only told them about the format rules and the 3 main issues you told us you wanted addressed: environment, including climate and water; development, including housing and zoning; and accountability and management, including personnel and the police department. We are recording these forums so that many more people other than all of you here today can watch them at their convenience. Please remain quiet so that each candidate's statements will be clearly heard on the videos. Apropos to that, if there's an issue, if you could just come to either me, well, I'll be up back there, or Rob, see Rob, he's right behind the videographer, Mike, right? Or any other WDC member you see with a little tag, that would be great. Instead of yelling out, it would be terrific because it helps with the video. Again, thank you for coming and taking time out of your lives to learn about our candidates. You are why we do this. You are why democracy still, in parentheses, works. Now I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Christine Dinsmore, who will review the ground rules for the forums. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. I'm hoping you all hear me. I also want to say that Amy took half of what I was going to say, but that's okay. I might repeat it anyway. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Woodstock Democratic Committee for inviting me to be the moderator. I will be moderating 4 of these, and then the last one you don't need a moderator because it's going to be meet and greet, and I won't be here. So with that said, let me read. So a little recap. The first forum, for those who might not have been here, was an introduction. It was each candidate had a chance to introduce themselves and speak in general terms about their vision. Tonight's forum is the first of 3 that will focus on specific issues. Tonight's focus is on the environment, specifically water and climate change. Candidates will have an opportunity to demonstrate their overall knowledge of environmental issues and how they would address specific Woodstock concerns. I remind everyone, including the candidates, that this is not a debate. It is not a platform to discredit or disparage opponents, but rather to focus on your knowledge and problem-solving capabilities as they pertain to the environment. The format. The questions have been selected from submitted questions from the public who responded to the Woodstock Democratic Committee outreach to registered Democrats. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer specific questions. I may ask a follow-up question if I think there's need for clarification. If I do, you will have up to 30 seconds to respond. A little housekeeping. We ask the audience to refrain from applauding until the end of the program. Also a reminder, there is no electioneering in the building, including posters or flyers. Please, if you have any, put away election material and remove political candidate buttons. Pretend you're at a polling site, okay? Please silence phones. And not that this needs to be said, but any interruption of a candidate from the audience or another candidate will result in that candidate having more time added to their response. In keeping with my role to provide an environment where each candidate can put their best foot forward, I want to remind everyone that while specific issues can be charged and even controversial, your enthusiasm or passion about a subject does not preclude that we ask you to refrain from jeering or cheering. Thank you. Finally, this forum is being recorded and will be posted to the Woodstock Democratic Committee website and Facebook page within the next couple of days, I believe. I'd like to introduce our timekeeper, Susan Bissonette. And now I'd like to introduce the candidates. I'm going to start with the candidates for town supervisor. It's Anula Cortis. That's okay. And Erin Moran. And David Wallace. The town council candidates, Lily Korolikoff, Marcel Nagel, and we are missing, as you probably see, Lori Osmond. Lori is not here because she had a previous engagement that was planned in the fall of 2024. And once the Woodstock Democratic Committee put out the schedule, she immediately let them know that she was unable to attend. However, I will read a statement she provided at the conclusion of the formal question and answer period. I think that's it. We're all good? Ready to go. Candidates, are you ready for your first question? Okay, I'm going to begin with the supervisors first, and it's going to be from left to right. Then I will go to the town board candidates. So question number 1 through 3 are on water, but here's question 1. How should the town navigate its legal jurisdiction with that of New York State authorities on water concerns? To make that a little more specific, what is your understanding of the legal jurisdiction on the issue of who does what? So we'll begin with Ms. Cortis.
Thank you. I want to start by saying that the safety... Oh, microphone, okay. I was ready to shout that out loud. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I want to start off by saying that the safety of our drinking water is not negotiable. So we have some issues here. Recent testings confirm the presence of PFAS in our municipal wells, and we're going to jump right into. I want to take a minute to thank people like Julia Blaylock and Arlene Weissman and Laura Rickey for their involvement in working with the state. So these issues pertaining to water cannot be solved by a municipality by itself. Number one, we have some laws. From time to time, we don't even understand the laws ourselves. We don't know if so-called cleanup plans comply with those laws. So building a very constructive relationship with our county, with the state, particularly with the Attorney General's office, I think is very critical in looking at this. Water doesn't stop at Woodstock boundaries. It goes throughout the county and beyond. And this is how we have to approach any of the remediation efforts, the planning efforts, etc. When it comes to source identification and long-term prevention, these are things that should not fall onto Woodstock taxpayers. These are things where we will work with environmental experts to help to look at grants from the federal government as well as state government to help us put in comprehensive water solutions. So bottom line, we can't do it alone. The leadership that Woodstock needs moving forward is leadership that is collaborative, that understands how to navigate and build trusted relationships with county, with state. We have to be able to understand the laws, and we have to be able to think outside the box, but at the same time keep Woodstock's particular problems in mind and put those solutions in place.
Ms. Moran?
Thank you. With regard to the jurisdiction of how water is protected, EPA would be at the federal level, New York State Department of Health would be at the state level, Ulster County Department of Health, county, and then there's us. We look upward for guidance, assuming that the larger the organization, they have more resources and more information and are better well-versed at the laws and enforcing them. However, Woodstock is Woodstock. There is something called home rule. We do have town laws, and we are allowed to have town laws that are a little bit stricter. We can't get any looser with our regulations, but we can get stricter. And I think that that's what we need to do because we are Woodstock, and we have always demonstrated having more strict laws when it comes to the environment, and I think that water shouldn't be any different. We have had some unique situations regarding our water and the potentially affecting it. But then we also, recently with the discussion of PFAS, this is something that's affecting everybody. I think it's important to reach out and, as Anula said, you know, there are other resources and other, don't reinvent the wheel. I think that that has value, but at the same time, I think that being proactive and taking a proactive approach is the way that we as Woodstockers can take care of this and show other communities and other states and the world basically how to address it, because sometimes you need to start from the bottom up, and I think that's our best approach. We do have, as a town, the authority to have and make rules and make laws that will protect our water. We should do so.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace?
Thank you so much. Protecting our water is, to me, so critical. And I can just imagine for a minute that your next door neighbor dumped 200 truckloads after truckload after truckload of contaminated construction and demolition debris right next door. That's going to affect your property values, it's going to affect your drinking water, and it's right on top of the aquifer, so it may affect all our water supply. And while the DEC, the state, has been clear, well, actually, it's not been that clear, right? But they've said that there's not a a situation that it requires them to step in. Woodstock has a really clear law. Have people read it? No person, firm, or private or municipal corporation or department thereof shall place, deposit, or dump, or cause to be placed, deposited, or dumped for the purpose of abandonment any construction and demolition debris. Now, that is clear as day to me. And we need to enforce our law. And so I would say, while the state, we can look to the state, it doesn't mean that we don't take the initiative, and this should have been done years ago, and we enforce our law. And that's what I would certainly do if elected supervisor.
Thank you. Do you need me to repeat the question, or you have it? Okay, Ms. Korolikoff.
Obviously, we're in a very difficult situation, and I think that some of the problems that we face could have been avoided if we had known when to ask for help. And it's one thing to have a very well-written law. It's well to have intentions to uphold our laws, but sometimes laws are written and they're not planned around the scenario that we're facing now. And I don't think the scale of the situation at Church Road is something that the people that wrote our laws could ever conceive of. And I think it would have been really, really smart when the problem started arising and when Socrates knew that they weren't capable of handling the problem themselves. If we had reached out to the district attorney at that point, we probably wouldn't be in the situation we're in now. But we are in the situation we're in now. And we really need to listen to the DC and basically figure out how we can work with the DC and not, say that they're in so-and-so's pocket or criticize them. And we need to be able to work with them as a town and as a community. But I think beyond that too, in terms of thinking about how we write laws as a community, we really have to tighten up and think about bigger problems. And I think focusing on the Church Road issue, while it's very, very important, I think realistically cleaning it up is a big task. I mean, you're gonna need court orders. It's already been there for years. Realistically, everything underneath the loads that were dumped is probably contaminated already. So how far do you dig? Do you dig all the way down to the water table? Like, what are we actually removing? And then we also have to think about the cost of that when you talk about cleaning up, contaminated waste at $150 to $450 per ton. If you're talking about 1,000 tons, what are we talking about? We don't even know. You're looking at millions of dollars, and where does that come from? How do we get reimbursed for that? So when we think about all the issues, we have to also consider that this kind of contamination is common. There are 8,000 sites in the United States that have this problem. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Nagel.
Hopefully this works a little better this time. So the EPA would be the top dog in the enforcement and rules and governing. Then the DEC is the second authority. And then we get down to the town of Woodstock laws. So Woodstock is very fortunate that we do have a stricter Woodstock law. As David Wallace mentioned, it just says we have a zero tolerance for construction and demolition debris. I disagree with some of the information from the New York State DEC. In one of their communications, it just flat out mentions that there are exceedances at the Shady site. And we do have test results for that. There's 6 SVOCs that have been identified: chromium, lead, mercury, 4.4-DDT, PFOS, and PFBA. Some of them are in exceedances of 6NYCRR Part 375-6.8. I don't think there's any leeway on what that site has on site as far as contaminated fill. 200 loads or thereabouts, it's debatable, went in. The infamous Plan E removed 4 loads of material out of 200 loads. There's a lot more material that's there. I'm the mad foiler according to some people, and I foil for stuff all the time. The only receipts I could get from the town of Woodstock as proof of disposal of C&D material was for 4 loads of concrete and asphalt. No record of proper disposal of any contaminants. So, you know, let's enforce the Woodstock law.
Thank you. Just to summarize, it sounds like you're all saying there's a law in the book, enforce it. Okay. Next question. What is the town's role in helping to assure safe private well water in general? And specifically, what is the town's legal role in protecting the aquifer and neighbors from problems with private wells? And we're going to begin with Ms. Moran.
Well, the town is responsible to keep its water and its residents safe. I think that with all of the recent water testing that's been done, there has been a rise in PFAS, and we've been talking about that. We all know that in wells 1 and 2, the PFAS levels were detected. They don't exceed the maximum levels as dictated by the Ulster County Department of Health, so only annual testing is required. However, I don't agree with that, and I don't agree with waiting until something's a problem before actually taking action, especially when it comes to water. When the PFAS were detected in our water last year, I was acting chair on the Environmental Commission. We recommended that the town begin quarterly testing. This was in an effort to get more information, more data, better informed decisions. The town complied and has been doing quarterly testing ever since. We anticipated that with more time, there will also be more accurate data as the testing gets better and we can make better decisions for our water. As a concerned resident who really does care about Woodstock, I have been looking into a solution of ensuring that the water is clean. PFAS are not going away. That's why they're called forever chemicals. I'm really excited. I recently took a trip to the pilot program over at Hurley, the landfill earlier this week. They're using reverse osmosis as a way to break apart the PFAS molecules. They're seeing up to 99% removal of the PFAS from the water. And as an added bonus, this removes all pollutants, not just PFAS. I strongly believe that Woodstock needs to take a proactive remediation plan approach, and that this is the answer to clean water in Woodstock, one that uses reverse osmosis. It uses water and air pressure, no chemicals, and if selected as supervisor, I will work with the town board to make a thoughtful, informed decision based on reliable information.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
Hundreds of trucks went in, and hundreds of trucks can go out. So remediation to me is critical and first step. I would hire also a independent, and I think this is really important because I don't think we've had an independent hydrogeologist to recommend next steps like source tracing. I mean, source tracing is critical because we can, one, find out potentially what's causing the problem before we spend, I think the rough figure, I met with Streamgo as well, is $1.2 million a year on a reverse osmosis system. And for years, we had pristine water. And then the shady dump, I'm not saying that the shady dump is the cause of forever chemicals being found in our wells. But it could be, and it is possible, and hydrogeologists like Paul Rubin, who's really respected, in an interview that I did with him, he said it was a travesty that we haven't cleaned it up. So we had pristine water, then shady dump is basically let alone. I don't think anything was done really to clean it up properly, despite so many hydrogeologists who have said, yeah, we better do it. And I think that we have to do source tracing as well as come up with filtration system options. Maybe not $1.2 million ones, but maybe there are other options as well. So that's why the first step to me is getting a hydrogeologist and also remediating the dump and following the law.
Thank you. Ms. Cortes.
I understood the question to be general, so I'm gonna respond accordingly. I believe that Woodstock's responsibility and part of my plan to keep us safe includes first and foremost transparency and immediate protection. We will conduct quarterly testing of the wells, and we're gonna launch a public dashboard so residents can easily access real-time information easily on the town website. Second, proven treatment technology. It may be reverse osmosis, it may be carbon activated. It depends on us testing what type of chemicals are in our water, more specifically, so that we can choose the appropriate remediation strategy. Third, source identification and long-term prevention. We will work with independent environmental experts to determine the source of contamination, whether it stems from septic systems or from industrial history or the area around Church Road. And we're gonna act to prevent further spread. Fourth, community education and engagement. We're gonna provide accessible educational materials on PFAS exposure and safe practices at home. We're gonna host regular community forums, and we're gonna establish a citizen advisory group that actually is going to communicate. We're gonna include grassroots organizations on that committee to keep residents informed and involved throughout the process. Fifth, collaboration, planning, and expert support. We're going to continue to work closely with Drinking Water Source Protection Program experts so that we have a long-term strategy that is grounded in science and in public safety. Sixth, funding without burdening taxpayers. So there's state and federal funding options. My time's running out, but we're going to shift the cost from residents, and we're gonna get this done. This isn't solving a problem all by ourselves. It's about raising a standard for how we protect our water and our health.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you need the question read, or you have it? Okay. Mr. Nagel.
So, the town's role in protecting the water, the first primary role would be making sure the stuff doesn't get dumped in the town. That's pretty obvious to me. The second role is when you know it's been dumped in the town, you have to go after it. I'll be specific to Church Road. Again, there's no real question about it. The town has the mechanism through enforcement of the stricter town law. Now, we were told a few years ago when the convictions were handed down by the court that we could go after that, and we could take the property owner to court and get an order to go, and if they were not willing to remediate it themselves, the town could then go in there and remediate that site under a court order. It's a lengthy process, and I feel it should have started the day the convictions were handed down. If the town goes through that process and the property owner does not pay for it, then it gets charged to their tax bill. My understanding is after 2 years, if they don't pay their tax bill, the county forecloses on the refunds, makes the town whole, and then they go after the property owner to collect the money. When we talk about transparency, there seems to be, for a lot of people, they're just not up to speed on the documentation. I've read thousands of pages of documents. I've provided much of this to the town board and the DWSP too. If anybody else wants to see the documents, I can easily email these to you. 5 professional environmental people have weighed in on this. They're all in agreement with what the problem is. So we just need to go after it, as we should have a couple of years ago when we got the convictions handed down by the court. Let's get going on it. Priority 1.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Golarkoff.
So obviously beyond the Church Road stuff and how we'd actually remediate that, that's open to debate, so I'm not really going to go super far into it. But I think one way or another, because these forever chemicals aren't going to go anywhere and the problem exists everywhere, and we don't really know the extent of it because it is such a deep-seated problem, that we really should invest in water filtration. The most commonly one used is granular activated charcoal treatments. The total cost is 10 cents to $1 per 1,000 gallons for a municipal water supply. There's also an ion exchange treatment, which is more money, but it actually captures more small chain PFAS than it does. I mean, sometimes long chain PFAS can get through the carbon activated ones, so that's kind of a couple thoughts on that. And reverse osmosis is good too, but in terms of the two most affordable ones, those would be what I'd go for. We also have a existing water supply protection district that contains 130 septic systems, some of which are 70 to 75 years old. The town is supposed to be monitoring those and making sure those are pumped every 3 to 5 years. And I think having a report every year and making sure that that actually happens, and then also facilitating those homeowners, making sure that they have access to the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, which actually would help them pay for septic systems if they did need to be replaced. So there are definitely different things that we could be doing as a town to make sure that those immediate threats that aren't going away, that aren't related to Church Road, are addressed. Also, I mean, the DWSP2 program has been wonderful, and that's always something that I think we should be really, really focusing on in terms of identifying potential threats. And also it does find applicable funding options for the town to supplement our funding. And then also we have, we have so many, the aquifer is not a small aquifer, it's huge. And everything in terms of our flooding and agricultural practices leaches into that, and that Sawkill Creek or stream or whatever goes into our aquifer, right? So we need to be able to protect our source water areas.
Okay, thank you. Our last water question, here it is. And we begin with Mr. Wallace, right? Okay, what is your plan to ensure water quality is maintained and improved? So we're looking for a plan.
Yeah. My plan is to first hire a hydrogeologist who's not associated with the town or the folks who are suing the town, who sued the town. So independence is really critical, and that's the first step, frankly, is to get a thoughtful, unbiased, brilliant. Hopefully someone from maybe a university who can give us specific plans for source tracing and decide which filtration system might be perfect, okay? So it may be StreamGo. I met with StreamGo. I thought it was fantastic. They said that they used aeration, and I forget the exact number of gallons. I think it was 800 gallons at a time, and the waste that it created was an espresso cup worth. So it was very impressive. So it may be the way to go. And there may be cheaper options, but first let's get the right expert, and I spent my entire career finding experts as a journalist. Let's find someone who's going to give us the help that we need and will provide us with a path forward. I don't think we know the exact path forward because I don't think we've gotten great information from the town. I think there's been a lot of PR events, and I think there's been a lot of misinformation, frankly. So let's get a very unbiased source to help us.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cordes.
Okay, so the situation at Church Road and last week's 2 oil spills demonstrates what happens when leadership doesn't communicate and/or act decisively. Families living near Church Road still don't know if their water is safe. So why hasn't it been cleaned up? 2 key decisions were made before I ever joined the town board as a council person. First, the town agreed to reduce charges against the polluter. Second, a cleanup agreement called Plan E was signed off on by our town supervisor and town engineer without ever allowing the full town board to speak with legal counsel to ask whether it complied with the law. Additionally, the DEC, after discussions, sent 2 letters to the town saying there's no debris, including no residue at the site, yet they offered no independent on-site testing to support that conclusion. Despite these challenges, I took action contacting the state attorney general, the state comptroller, to explore every possible legal and financial pathway to revisit the agreement and bring the issue into light where it belongs. Beyond this, what we need to do is prioritize our health by enforcing immediate cleanup of any contaminated site that threatens our watershed. We need to restore transparency, no more requiring protests and petitions to get government to act. Third, strengthen our environmental protections for our critical watershed that feeds both local aquifers and the Ashokan. Fourth, pursue financial restitution so that this burden doesn't fall to taxpayers. Fifth, I will appoint an environmental champion to my council seat so that we ensure continued environmental advocacy.
Thank you. Ms. Moran?
Can you actually repeat the question?
Sure. What is your plan to ensure water quality is maintained and improved?
Thank you. My plan has to do with cleaning up Church Road, because that is an issue. I've actually spoken to a lot of people, and they're not really familiar with all the ins and outs, so I'm going to try to quickly just give a lowdown on 10 Church Road. The main issue is that the building department received an application that was missing required information, required documents. Unfortunately, the permit was still issued. This is important information like a bill of lading that shows how many truckloads. We estimated 200, we don't know. A permit was still issued. This cannot and this will not happen if I'm elected as a supervisor. A violation later, after a lot of public outcry, was issued to the property owner in April 2023, who then offered Plan E, which you've heard about, in response to the violation. Plan E was wholly inadequate since it didn't address the real issue of cleanup. To my knowledge, the violation has actually never been remedied. And that's important, because what that means is we can pick up right where we left off and finish what we started, and we can actually enforce the law. If I'm elected, I would give support and resources to the current building inspector. The building inspector is the one who is the enforcement officer in situations like this, by empowering the building inspector and their staff so that they can pursue this and any other violations. This includes working with local law enforcement, environmental agencies like the DEC and the Department of Health to move forward. I would also like to do a public awareness campaign, kind of a see something, say something, similar to what you've already heard. I would like to have an easy online form to use. And on a side note, I would just like to say with source testing takes time and money, and after about several years, you're left with not much additional information than when you started. I think that we should start.
Thank you. Ms. Korolkoff.
Okay. I think educating the public, I mean, I'm not going to go into the Church Road thing a lot because I think that there's a lot of anomalous things that are going to happen. And there's a lot of things that we can't control there. And I hope that any of these candidates would be willing to go as far as they could in cleaning it up. But in terms of things that we can be doing in a more consistent way, I think education, talking about all the things that contain PFAS and that could contaminate our water source. I mean, it's in everything from makeup to clothing to detergents. I mean, it's literally in everything. It's in rain. So in terms of educating and maybe working with local businesses in terms of clean practices and products, like talking to hardware stores and talking to pharmacies, talking to landscapers, construction workers, all those things, and making sure that everyone that's working within our town and buying things within our town are making smart decisions every single day. Also, in terms of well testing, source tracing, yes, is very difficult, and it's also expensive. And it doesn't really always, I mean, it sounds great on paper, but it's not something that's easily practicable. But something that we could be doing to ensure that people that maybe aren't on municipal well or on municipal water but have private wells, is potentially sponsoring individual well testings in various areas so that we can have an idea of what people that are on their own private wells are experiencing, if there's any contamination that we're not aware of, and then we can get a better map in terms of where we're seeing, you know, effects of agricultural runoff or flooding or, you know, other contamination that we're just not aware of. I think focusing on one spot can be really dangerous in a lot of ways. I think it's important, but I think we have to be looking at a bigger picture and also engaging people that are coming here in terms of what the practices we need to see and how delicate the ecosystem actually is. We have a ton of wetlands. We have a ton of tributaries that go into our aquifer. And if we're not protecting those on the surface level, it's gonna leach into everybody's water, whether or not you have a well or you're on municipal water.
Mr. Nagel?
Could you give me that question again?
Sure. What is your plan to ensure water quality is maintained and improved?
So that starts with preventing the problem from the beginning. The Drinking Water Source Protection Program, they've been working hard at coming up with a protection plan all along. Since I've been attending those meetings, one thing that has come out through that program was that 10 Church Road will actually have some language written into the narrative, and that site will be indicated on a map. So it's not going to just disappear from sight. The other thing is, when the DEC writes a letter and we have 5 professional environmental people that are in unison challenging some of the information, I believe the town of itself has a responsibility to challenge that. In one of the DEC law allows for 5,000, up to 5,000 cubic yards of non-compostable, recognizable, uncontaminated C&D waste to be disposed on a site. Of course, Woodstock has the stricter law. The problem is the 5 professionals, environmental professionals, have categorized it as largely unrecognizable, and it is contaminated. But as of a recent FOIL request to the town of Woodstock, I can't get any information where the town of Woodstock actually took the initiative to challenge the DEC with all the documentation that's been done by the professionals. So if you want to start protecting water, which is a great idea and we should all be doing it, it starts with the information that the poor Amy family has had to pay for, and it has nearly bankrupted them. It's all available. As I said, I'll make it available to anybody that wants it. End of my time.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next question. And we're going to begin with you, I believe, Ms. Cordes, right? You'll be first. So the question is, no longer water in here, more general. What is your vision for dealing with the effects of climate change on the town's infrastructure, land, waterways, housing, and so forth?
So my vision for climate change and protecting us as the world, I mean, this is something we're all going to be facing with. It's a little bit of a bold plan. We've already done some good things as a foundation. We've cleaned up oil tanks from underneath our ground. We've joined the Climate Smart Communities program. These are initiatives, we established a Climate Smart Task Force. This is something that I supported at my year on the town board. But my plan focuses on 4 key priorities. First, renewable energy transition. So I'd like to see us expand solar installations on municipal buildings and create a community solar program that makes clean energy accessible to all residents. Second is expanding sustainable transportation. We'll expand our electric vehicle charging infrastructure throughout Woodstock and implement complete streets principles that will put in bike lanes, better sidewalks, and this will help us to reduce our dependency on cars and in turn help us with climate change. Third is building efficiency. So we should work together to establish green building codes for new construction, to provide property tax incentives for energy efficient retrofits. And I'd like to see us offer free energy audits for homeowners. And fourth is natural carbon capture. So protect and expand our forests and wetlands while working with our tree committee on community planting initiatives. So this is also an economic plan. It's not just an environmental one. These are initiatives that could help bring jobs to Woodstock, reduce energy costs for residents, and secure our future as a leader in sustainable tourism.
Thank you. Ms. Moran.
Thank you. So regarding the infrastructure, regarding climate change, this is my wheelhouse. Any of those of you who know me, I've actually been digging into the climate change issue for many years now. So flooding, that's a big one. With approximately, believe it or not, 40% of Woodstock properties are at risk of flooding in the next 30 years. As I think Lily mentioned, we have a lot of waterways, smaller water bodies, wetlands. These are all going to contribute to flooding down the road. It's important to consider the frequency of these extreme weather events with flooding mitigation strategies that we can implement to protect residents as well as our infrastructure. In our zoning, we need to make sure that our zoning includes stricter environmental guidelines, incorporating green infrastructure when available. I've also had discussions with some members of the planning board regarding the need to update the comp plan. We can do this through the Climate Smart Communities program. We can have experts available to assist us incorporating more green infrastructure solutions when developing land. Getting ahead of it and being proactive is the way that we can survive. The town also needs to take advantage of funding with the same program that are available for infrastructure needs like culverts and bridges. Projects that include mitigating the effects of climate change through repairing roadways and other infrastructures. This is how we can be resilient to it and get ahead of it. Really important. I can't express it enough. It's spring. It's been a wet spring. We've heard of the McDaniels Road flooding out, etc. It's doable if we get ahead of it. Lastly, one other thing I would like to mention is the town only has one electric vehicle. I'd like to see that number increase.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
I'll pick it up. Okay, because one of the things that I'd like to do is help electrify our municipal fleet. So Ken Panzo was involved in a really amazing report about our emissions, and the #1 driver of our greenhouse gases is gasoline. So how do we lower the amount of gasoline we're spewing and buying? And I think a good first step is to do what Rosendale did, and at least with a pilot program, electrify our police vehicles, which are really on the road a lot. So we can, at first, the town of Ulster had bought some hybrids, and they didn't work out so well, their police force. So I looked into it, and there's now a Chevy Blazer, which is supposed to be quite powerful and give the police everything they need in terms of acceleration, but it can save about $13,000 per vehicle over its 3-year life. Police vehicles only last about 3 years, generally. They can last a little longer, but that's the way they take a beating. So I would, also I found out that the DEC is offering money for us to electrify our police vehicles. So the Chevy Blazer is a good option. I spoke to Romeo Ford, and right now they go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 11 seconds, about half as fast. They're actually twice as fast as gas-powered police cars. And police cars.
Thank you. I think it's Mr. Nagel, correct?
So, the climate change, Ken Panza, he sends me all these amazing reports that the Climate Smart Committee has been putting together. It's just amazing what they've outlined and ideas that they have and how that all fits into. And the town should utilize all of these things: solar power, reducing emissions, electric vehicles. You know, and in particular, when we get into the town's infrastructure, we do have a big problem at the Woodstock Highway Department. That's a building that was built 18 or 20 years ago. The heating system, it's inadequate. It's questionable whether the solar system is doing what it's supposed to do. It needs tons and tons of work. When we get into other things like the environment, Mike Madison, who is a deputy director of Ulster County Emergency Management, he was down south during the flooding, and what he realized was the geography down there is very much the same as it is here. And if we were to get a 20-inch rainfall or something, we'd be wiped out. So we have to really be proactive about controlling runoff problems and flooding and all of that stuff. And again, the town of Woodstock has some major infrastructure problems: culvert pipes failing, catch basins falling in. We're just in a lot of trouble, real problems. So we need to really step up the maintenance program, not only of our highway infrastructure and flooding provisions, but also how we are with our buildings. So it all fits into play, and we need to really work a lot harder to accomplish this stuff.
Thank you. Ms. Korolkoff.
So yes to all that. I'm not going to reiterate a lot of that because I agree with pretty much everything that everyone said. I think one of the biggest things that I think about, and he was just talking about Mike going down south and seeing how the terrain was very similar. We last year saw a very, very active wildfire season. And I think in terms of when you look at places like Asheville as compared to Woodstock and the Catskills, there's a lot of similarities. In 2024, Massachusetts experienced 663 fires in October and November alone, which is usually 15 to 20 a month. And most of those are human caused. I think one, again, educating the public in terms of, you know, how to prevent forest fires and how to do fires safely. And one of those things is having open burn permits for large campfires and burn piles. Instead of just having open burn seasons, knowing where fires are starting so that we can have a prepared first responders crew to address problems as they come up. Also educating the public and creating, you know, buffer zones around houses, cleaning their gutters, having, you know, fire blocks, basically areas where fire won't go through. I think what we saw in Asheville could very easily happen here. And that goes into some of the science where we're seeing warmer air coming through, we're seeing more torrential downpours, but warmer air holds more moisture, and warmer atmosphere is thirstier. So even if we're having more downpours, the warmer atmosphere is going to pull more of that moisture up. So we're going to still see droughts, even though we're going to get a lot of rain and our plants are going to grow, the underbrush and the dead trees and everything else. And that leads to another problem too, because we don't have a real maintenance crew or people that are looking around for ways to remediate properties that have a lot of downed wood, dead trees. We don't thin out our forests. We don't do any forest management. So all those kind of things, and most importantly, wildfire training for local responders. I think that's a huge thing, because if we did get hit with a forest fire, it would sweep through this town. That's pretty much all wood very quickly.
Thank you. Next question. And probably you could do this under 2 minutes. It's pretty direct. How will you lead on climate issues, and what is the first thing you would do in office? And we begin with Ms. Moran.
How I would be with climate issues is I would utilize the Woodstock Environmental Commission. The Woodstock Environmental Commission is actually written into our law. It's a very important group of volunteers, and over the years has really helped Woodstock to achieve some amazing things. On a side note, we actually have achieved net zero carbon footprint in 2017. That's a really impressive milestone that we achieved. And we did that before any of this Climate Smart program, before any of that, we joined any of that. We really have been ahead of the bar, but we do also have some issues that we need to take care of that you've heard about tonight. But the Environmental Commission was developed to actually aid and help the town board as well as the planning board when it comes to environmental issues. They assist the plan board with things like site visits and seeker applications. They make recommendations to the town board, and that's a crucial role in advising the town board on environmental issues and engaging the community in these environmental issues. That is their mission. We have had some really good groups. Right now, we are down. It's never gone away. There's 2 people that are members right now. There are 2 additional people that are in the process of getting appointed. That still leaves 3 open seats. So I would also just like to put out there, if anybody wants to help make a difference or feel like they're getting involved and doesn't want to commit to running for office, which is 2 whole years, join the Environmental Commission. You really will get a good flavor of what this town has the authority to do and what it will do. Another thing is using the NRI, the Natural Resource Inventory tool. When I was on the Environmental Commission, we created this. It's 23 maps, including wetlands, forests, flood zones, and climate resilience. This is a really good tool, and that's the reason we spent so long making it.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I'm getting. Refrain from. Okay, yeah. There's been a request to refrain from nonverbal commentary. Okay, so do your best with body language.
I saw you guys twitch.
No, wait a second. Before you go on, I just want to underscore. I want to underscore what the question again. It was, how will you lead on climate issues, and what is the first thing you would do? So.
The first thing I would do, I wouldn't wait until I'm elected supervisor to establish what we should have done forever ago, which is have an emergency alert system that's automated. So Woodstock's website advises that when an emergency strikes, it's important to be in the know. Okay. But Woodstock relies on antiquated technology, including Facebook and door knocking. Maybe they have bullhorns to communicate with residents in a crisis. We lack an emergency alert system that can quickly reach residents by text, email, and telephone, and in many languages. Shandaken has one, Olive has one, and it costs Shandaken $900 a year. I mean, that's crazy that we haven't done this already. I hope we can all agree that we should invest in public safety today. We should ask the supervisor, he's here, isn't he? Is he still here? Spend $1,000 or so on an emergency alert system, and let's not wait till the next election. That's the first thing I would do, because the sacred duty of a supervisor is to keep one's neighbors safe, and that would guide me every day.
Thank you. Ms. Cordes.
Okay, I'm going to answer this in a 1A, B, C, D, and E format. First and foremost, starting with myself, my leadership would not treat the environment as an afterthought. It's a priority, and that's the type of leadership that I would bring to Woodstock. I don't think that solutions come from one person. So one of the first things that I would do in office is to pull together the right people from environmental groups. I'd like to see youth leaders, experts, state and county officials, and every town board member willing to put Woodstock first come together and really discuss what 1A is, what 1B is, and how we're going to go about it with clear next steps. I also want for us to commit to partnering with these schools to turn education into action. I think that youth energy, it'd be amazing to help keep us on track. And I have that experience. So Woodstock should be able to access state and county resources. We have access to the right people. We have environmental groups here working on plastic, working on water. We need to pull together the right people and sit down in a room and work collaboratively with the idea that our priority is Woodstock first. And that's what I would do.
Thank you. Do you need me to read it, or you have it? Yes, Ms. Karlikoff.
I think the first thing I would do is hire a grant writer. Everything that we're talking about is reliant on funds, and I don't think we have enough funds to do everything that we want to do. When we look at complete streets, in terms of getting more public transportation and having bike lanes and having walkable sidewalks and having more trails and being able to maintain our trails, that's all well and good, but we don't have the funds to do that, and it's really reliant on a grant writer. So are so many things, getting electric vehicles. All of these things cost lots of money. And I think any of the big ideas that we do have and that have been presented here rely on something like that. And I can't believe that we haven't been going for more grants. And then I think through that, we start talking about expanding, critical environmental areas and, supporting all these great, committees and, organizations within town that are doing work that they can't really afford to push forward on. Having that foundation will give us the ability to do so much more than we've been able to do. It's great to have ideas, but if you don't have the money to actually fund them, it doesn't do any good.
Thank you. Mr. Nagel.
So as I said before, Woodstock is very fortunate. We got a lot of really good laws and stricter laws than the state that helps us with protecting our environment and gets us headed in the right direction with climate change. The Woodstock Environmental Commission, once again, I'm going to say they did amazing work leading up to and through part of the Church Road episode until the commission fell apart. We got to get that back up and running. We need real important, knowledgeable people involved in that. The town can always defer to the state and the county for help and assistance with this. The Climate Smart Committee is an amazing resource. They've done a lot of this work. We need to gather all this information from all these other agencies and bring them into the fold here. And we have to actually enact and make sure we follow the recommendations and maybe improve some of our laws, maybe some stricter laws. But even if you have all the greatest laws in the world, if you don't have enforcement, you're going to lose. And that's why we ended up with Church Road. So that's where I'm at with that.
Thank you. Next question. We're going to begin with Mr. Wallace. How would you integrate sustainability and resilience into day-to-day activities of the town?
Well, I think that we could have a composting program. We have talked about it. We could actually have one that's in a garden nearby, and that would encourage sustainability. I don't think it would cost all that much, but I do want to address an elephant in the room, which is, the notion that we can't afford some of these initiatives is not true. How can we not afford to do it? And we ran last year about a $3 million surplus. And I get the idea of having a reserve fund. I get it, and that's important to have a rainy day fund. But it's raining in a lot of ways in this town. It's pouring, and we have like a cocktail umbrella in the deluge. And so it's time to sort of step up and invest in things that matter and will affect us all. So the trails at Camo are needing a lot of work. The dog park is a little shabby and needs to be upgraded. And we talked about vehicles. Well, maybe we need a pilot program to start it. These are just sort of common sense steps that we can afford today.
Thank you. Ms. Cordes.
A lot of these ideas that have been shared, this is what helps us to be sustainable every day, 365 days of the year. Using electric, having folks be comfortable walking into town, collaborating with with each other first and foremost, and then with county and with state, building trusted relationships, sitting in a room, but then bringing the information out to the public in a transparent way, sharing what's happening with the water, putting that on a dashboard so people don't have to, put it on their calendar as a tickler to, hey, did the town test this water again? These are ways that we can actually maintain being a sustainable, resilient community. Furthermore, and I know this is a separate session, but zoning, so how we build, what we use to build, we have to incentivize people to build in smaller clusters and to have lots of free land. We have to protect our wetlands. We have to encourage trails. These are things that help us just be that sustainable community.
Thank you. Ms. Moran.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
I'm trying to stay on point.
You want me to read it again? Yes. How would you integrate sustainability and resilience into the day-to-day activities of the town?
Okay. So what I would do, I know you mentioned composting. We actually do have composting. We actually have done a lot of things that have helped introduce sustainability into the town. Complete Streets is also a program that's part of the Climate Smart Communities. One thing I have faulted myself for, as well as other people have told me, is I haven't put it out there enough. We do have a program and the town is involved with it. Actually, there's a lot of funding available, and I hate to leave money sitting on the table. And I guess I'm going to use this opportunity as a plea. Anybody who wants to get involved and wants to make a difference, if you want to get involved as the residents, you can join the Climate Smart Communities Task Force. I'm the coordinator for the town, and we are doing some great things. I'm working with Complete Streets and looking at actually getting them funding for a feasibility study for the sidewalk project that they want to do. Also, the electric vehicles, the ports, we have funding if we want to, what you mentioned, change over our police fleet. That's another program in that program. There's so much there. If you go to New York State Climate Smart Communities, you can look it up and you can see it. Please reach out to myself. I can also put you in touch with the other members of the task force. This is how we move forward and become more sustainable in our everyday lives. It also has to do with farmers markets. I'm trying to think of some of the things that we've done over the years. There's so many. Some of the projects are bigger and take more time, upwards of a year. Some of the projects are smaller, and they can even be as simple as a community outreach, getting together with the community, holding regular sessions so that we can hear concerns about the environment and we can address them, things like that. Went a little off topic, but.
Great. Okay, thank you. Mr. Nagel.
That's a wide open question. There's a lot that can be done. Where do you start? The Complete Streets, I've met with them, with Howard, and I forget the other person's name. They've got some great ideas to get our village center back in shape so you can walk the sidewalks and change the traffic patterns. Community gardens and things like that are a great idea. The farmers market is a great event. Be nice to get them out of a parking lot that's full of holes so you can't even drive through it. And just make the town more inviting and friendly, user-friendly. And this can happen, this all fits in with your environmental commission, sustainability, climate smart, zoning issues, and all of that stuff. We got a lot of work that needs to be done. It's a complicated issue, but I think we're on the right track with all of these commissions when we get them back in force, the Environmental Commission especially. The other thing I would like to see, we have various commissions. I would like to see a commission all of its own for the water. The DWSP2 is doing some really great work, and they're gonna come up with a plan that's gonna help us manage our water problems. But let's take it a step further on a local level and have a water commission that will really focus on the water. And when the DWSP2 comes in, it's very advisory and everything, but just like New York City has a great big DEP, Woodstock should really have its own arm in the building and zoning office that deals specifically with water and compliance issues.
Thank you. Ms. Garlikoff?
It is a wide open question. I think, it's kind of complicated, but I think in terms of to get to a point where the town is really sustainable, you have to have everyone on board. I think getting everyone involved and making people feel involved, I think that's, kind of where we get into the idea of using, hardware stores and pharmacies and places that we go every day for everyday needs that could be, contaminants in our water supply. Getting them to focus on promoting green, activities and green practices and green products is really important. I think that's a great kind of like open, just simple, small thing. But I think, like the problems that we face are not just our own problems, right? We have 2 garbage companies that really service the town. They, practice single stream recycling, which means is they're not recycling. We have, it's really difficult. I think it's difficult to educate the public and really make them understand and make everyone understand that everyone has a hand in it. But I think the town really has to put its money where its mouth is and show that it actually cares. I think if the town was showing that it cares at the existential level that it should be, because this is what we base our lives on, is our environment around us. But when you walk up to the Como, when you walk through the streets, it doesn't look like we care about the sustainability. We don't have great storm drains. We don't have clear trails. We have garbage on the trails. We have garbage on the sides of our roads. We don't have people maintaining it. And when you don't have that kind of like outward public persona of caring about your town, then no one else is going to care about it. So I think the first thing is really just, putting information in people's hands and saying, this is what we're doing. And not having it be, oh, we're looking for people for this commission, or we're looking for people for this, and this committee did great work, but we're not going to implement any of it. Like, just start doing things.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 more questions, so we're coming around the bend here. So, this is going to begin with Ms. Cordes. How do you, I almost got to the last one, sorry. How do you propose reconciling sustainability and resiliency goals with budget constraints?
Okay, collaboration, and a grant writer. So there are so many state opportunities. The work that we're doing with DWSP right now is, to my knowledge, not costing the town a dime, and it's fantastic work. And through this collaboration with the state, they are going to help us get grants, and those grants are going to help us look at source protection, and the grants are actually going to expand the testing of the municipal wells to include private people's wells, and people who sign up for it, I'll be one of the first ones there, will actually get the benefit of understanding what PFAS are in their private wells. And so that's one example of how we're gonna do this. We're not gonna put the burden on Woodstockers in, separate session, but it's already very unaffordable for many, and we don't need to do these things in a silo. So building good relationships with the state, with the county, and being able to look for federal money opportunities is critical moving forward. And that's where a civilian task force that combines industry experts who focus on water, who focus on different aspects of the environment, that is their arena. They know who to talk with and what to go for, and that's how we do it together.
Thank you. Ms. Moran.
Thank you. So I think the way that we deal with the budget restraints when dealing with sustainability is by smart planning. I recently met actually with a company about a potential solar field at the capped landfill that the town owns. This would be local energy from Woodstock. And any Woodstock resident that decides to opt into the program would see a savings of up to 15 to 20% of the kilowatt usage on their bill. The town would also see that savings. And the town would get a rental fee. The property, which is town-owned, becomes taxable now. Part of it does. So there's also tax revenue that goes to the county as well as the school district. So here's a way to plan smart, where we're being sustainable, we're using solar locally, we're not getting it from some farm in another country, or I'm talking about Canada, far away, but it's actually Woodstock Solar. We're benefiting financially, the residents, and we are able to offset the cost of something like that. Another thing is, I actually didn't mean to come off earlier in that I don't think a grant writer is a smart move, because I think we could really benefit from a grant writer. I think hiring someone solely as a grant writer might be overkill, but I think that somebody, and there are people with those kinds of skills that also do other things, and a well-rounded approach. Someone mentioned maybe potentially a college student. I think that would be beneficial for the town to help us look at ideas and to plan smarter and to offset the budgetary restraints.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
Well, I've raised a lot of money over the years, working in a nonprofit for 6 years, the Economic Hardship Reporting Project, which got grants from organizations like the Ford Foundation and Open Society and other major funders. And actually, major funders, what's interesting about it is we think that funding opportunities are disappearing. They're actually not. Private philanthropy is actually opening its wallet because the federal government is, clamping down on doing everything and anything, right, that is benefiting people. So we're finding that federal dollars are disappearing. So I'm all for, and discussed at the initial forum, my idea of hiring a full-time grant writer. I think it can't be a college student. I don't think it can be an intern. I think it's got to be a professional who raises, 3x their salary ultimately, which is sort of a general goal. 3x is a decent ROI, I think, return on investment for a professional grant writer. But we need to spend some of our surplus on important priorities today, not kick it down the road. And another thing that I would do to make this town more affordable is if we have run a $3 million plus surplus, I would not raise your taxes 2%, I think $32,000 last year. I wouldn't have done that. I would have kept the taxes flat. I think it would have been the right thing to do, so some people have a little more sustainability in their pockets, and I think it would have been a good thing to do. So we have to take steps now to spend somewhat wisely money that we've, I think, not invested.
Thank you. Ms. Kolikoff.
I feel like my answer's been taken. So I think we're all in agreement that grant writers are awesome. But I think there's also some missed opportunities in talking about like creating fines for environmental infractions and stuff like that. And I mean, we have such a huge tourist population. And I think one of the biggest things that we hear pretty regularly is that we see people littering or doing things that we wouldn't be doing with our, with our land or our property. And I think monetizing some of these infractions would be probably pretty good, and that, would help with enforcement too. I think if people were afraid that they were gonna get fined for something, they would probably be less likely to do it. And then if we got to actually collect fines, maybe those could go into a fund that could help us out. But also, I mean, I think if we really promoted ourselves as a champion of the environment and a town that was supporting green practices, there's a whole community of people that come and spend money and support that. And I think the more that you you promote that idea and you practice that idea, you open the doors for people to, you know, privately fund things and to help out and to actually want to donate their money and their time. But when you don't actively, you know, put out that you're doing something like that, then people just lose interest. But yeah, I mean, I think the grant writer thing is my top one. I think that's a really good idea. I think there's millions of dollars left on the table every single year that we haven't been going after. And I think for everything that we want to do, I mean, you know, we can talk about cost analysis between electric vehicles and gas vehicles for the, you know, for the police department and all that stuff. But, you know, with smart investment in our environment and in our town, we can make that money back.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr.
so
Nagel.
the grants writer, I don't know why we haven't utilized that avenue already. And I think about the Village of Saugerties. Village of Saugerties was kind of a rundown village about 15 years ago, and they've made amazing improvements there. New street lights, it's a nice walkable town now. I don't almost trip over broken sidewalks in the Village of Saugerties, but I do right here in our village. But I think a lot of things really have to come from the community, from within. The community center project, it's a great project. You know, the town needs to get behind that, I think, with a bond to take care of the young people. And that group is looking for some really ambitious community support to put the rest of that funding together. But it definitely, grants writer, we should be doing that, but we also need to look within and all do our own part and make these improvements. I wasn't aware that the town is carrying a $3 million surplus. I had no idea. Taxpayers do not pay taxes to have an excessive amount of money sitting in a bank account somewhere. There's a safe margin that we need to keep, and there's guidelines that are set in place by the state. And if we're exceeding those guidelines by a lot of money, that's not why taxpayers pay taxes. I think we should bring that down. And you know, we talk about the cost of remediating Church Road. Maybe we need to go after that avenue, the legal mechanism, and use some of that money to get that done, and then wait for the county to bring it back.
Thank you. This is the last question, and then I'm going to read Ms. Osmond's statement. So here's the last question, and it begins with you, Ms. Moran. What specific plans would you put in place in case of climate-related disasters, such as flooding or wildfires?
Good question, because I think it's not if, it's when. The alert system that you've heard about earlier, there actually is one that exists on the state level. I actually join it, and sometimes it's a little bit annoying. I get constant texts on my phone. I think bringing that to a more local level would be beneficial. Obviously, it talks in more generalities about roads that are flooded or other water issues. I think having a more localized alert system could be beneficial. I think that the existing system of calling seniors who don't have internet works. It works well in our community. These are people who we still need to be in touch with and reach out to. Oh dear, I'm forgetting the question. I apologize.
What specific plans would you put in place in case of a climate-related disaster?
Okay, so then, thank you. So also communication is going to be key. There's going to be people who are not, emergency services may not be able to get to. Getting to know your neighbor, communicating with the town. If you see something, if you see a downed wire or something because of a flood or a catastrophe or a hurricane, really just having a network in our system where we can all communicate. I think that might start with the phones as well as, believe it or not, text messages, because we could actually still potentially have that service in an emergency. Website would be great, but it may not be as effective because we wouldn't have power. But I think that these are the kind of things that I would definitely want to look into and see what other ideas are out there to establish something, because I think it's not if, it's when. I really do.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
Well, I've already talked about a common sense step that we can take yesterday, which is getting an emergency alert system, which does provide text and phone and email with a click. So it's the era of bullhorns. Well, come on, it's time to do this. And other towns do it, and it doesn't cost all that much. I would also work, I mean, the threat of fires, brush fires, is increasing. It killed an 18-year-old DEC worker, a brush fire near here last year. So they're getting deadlier. Our rain events that have actually, last more than 5 hours and 5 inches of rain in a day have gone up 103% from 1958 to 2018. So yeah, I mean, we're feeling the wrath of climate change regularly. The storm's getting deadlier, and one of the things that we could do is become a fire-wise community, which is basically, advising people little things that they can do around their house, like get rid of pine cones that are up against, the wood, your wood siding, things like that. You clean that up, and that alone isn't going to cost us very much, but it's a proactive step that we can take. And I believe that the sacred duty of a supervisor is to keep our neighbors safe, and every day I would focus on keeping our neighbors safe. And I will vow to do that if you elect me with this giant responsibility. I promise you that.
Thank you. Ms. Cortes.
As a council person, I went to one of the fire commissioners and I asked for him to, at their meetings, discuss themselves what they need from us, the town. And those discussions have happened. I believe that they're summarizing those and that discussion will be forthcoming. So first and foremost is asking the experts what they need, and then we listen to them and we implement it. I'm going to go back to collaboration. In the event of any type of a disaster, there's going to be a chain of command that gets triggered. And it's going to involve Woodstock, it's going to involve the county, it's going to involve the state, and possibly the federal government, depending on what that disaster is. We should have in place, and the town currently is looking for and evaluating vendors for an alert system. So that's going to be a given. But we need to go beyond that. Depending on the type of disaster, what is our communication protocol for our residents? Is it only online? Are we going to have next of kin tapping into this? Because there is a cost associated with all of it. Are we going to pull together a citizen group that can actually help elders move and get out? So I think about a fire, we don't have many ways in and out of our town. So it is very concerning, to be quite blunt. And I think that we go back to collaboration, not just with our county and our state and federal colleagues, but also citizen action groups are a must moving forward. And as well, hopefully we get more volunteers to properly get trained. Woodstock does offer that training for free for fire and rescue workers.
Thank you. Mr. Nagel.
So the emergency notification idea is a great idea. It's probably long overdue. I would imagine for the technical people, it's an easy thing to implement, and I think we just have to fund it. When you get into emergency response, our town is exceptionally vulnerable now compared to where we were 20 years ago. With the climate change, flooding is a huge risk. We've come close with Irene, where if it had rained another 6 hours very heavily, we would have seen much more catastrophic damage locally to Woodstock. We often depend on our Woodstock Highway Department to respond to the trees down in the clogged culverts and the washed out roads and everything. Unfortunately, our highway department is, I feel, understaffed. The highway superintendent went to bat for the workers and got them substantial raises, which were long overdue. I think they need more, because when we're in trouble, we need them. And if you want people to stand by you and work hard, you got to make them feel good about coming to work. Fire would be the second most concerning aspect. And it's a national problem, the volunteerism, it's on its way down because people are so busy trying to make a living, they don't have time to respond. Woodstock also has a much older population than a lot of towns, so probably within 10 years we're going to have to go with a partially paid department, just like we did with the EMS. But it all comes into play. I think the town is very vulnerable when it comes to infrastructure. I know a lot about infrastructure through my business, and I'm looking at the highway department. So,
Thank you. Ms. Kolikoff?
Yes to the emergency alert system and all that stuff. I can't really disagree with anything that's been said this far. I think one of the things that we're forgetting about, and it was a big debate in the winter, was having a cooling and warming center and having that be a very specific and delegated thing. We still haven't really resolved that. It got warm, we don't think about it, but what happens when we have a series of 90-degree days and we have a bunch of 65 and 70-year-olds that don't have air conditioning in their homes? Where do they go? And that still hasn't been parsed out. I would really, really like to see something enacted, kind of like a civilian conservation corps, where we have a citizens committee that's aware of people that are potentially in danger or don't have people at home with them, that can also help manage our lands and help do all those things. And say you have a house and you're worried about your gutters being cleaned or having brush around your house or whatever. People can come in, a group that could come in and help you evaluate how to create a safe environment around your house, how to eliminate some of the fire danger, and maybe even having something like an arborist or like a maintenance crew that could go and not only take care of our public lands, but could also go and say, oh, this neighbor is having a really hard time. Let's cut down some of these dead trees and remove some of these dead trees, put it into a group firewood committee or something like that. I mean, there's ways that we can do things if we think about them a little bit more abstractly. But I think that, not forgetting about issues like the cooling and warming center and, there's so many just like common sense things that we could be doing. I wish I could be more exact, but thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to now read Lori Osmond's statement, and then I'll wrap this up, okay? These are not my words, they're hers, so there are going to be some, she has abbreviations. I have no idea what they are, but I'm just reading it. Okay. Thank you to everyone who's come out this evening, and also thank you to the Woodstock Dems for organizing these forums. I apologize for not being here. I'm out of town for something booked last fall. I asked to share my thoughts on tonight's topic: environment, water quality, and climate change. Woodstock is a rural mountain town, and keeping our rural quality and protecting our natural environment is vital to our health, quality of life, and also Woodstock's financial health. We exist in symbiosis with nature in a constant give and take. This, just like good governance, is all about balance. We need to protect our green spaces while being mindful of our need for more sustainably built, affordable housing in ways that allow residents to interact with nature, not a parking lot. I support Complete Streets and the Andy Lee Field reimagining in their advocacy for creating more trails so we can immerse ourselves in the healing power of nature. This fall, we saw forest fires near us and realized it could happen here. We rely on our volunteer first responders, our firefighters. There are various grants with FEMA and HSES that could help our fire department with resource and public awareness. I believe Woodstock needs a part-time grant writer for the benefit of the entire town. We would also benefit from an emergency notification system, and that requires bringing cell service to Western Woodstock. Additionally, the creation of a community pool with construction and operation costs funded through grants and private donors will provide respite on hot days, as well as the health and safety benefits of exercise and swim lessons. The town also needs to model carbon neutrality and energy efficiency, steering away from fossil fuels in town vehicles when possible. The New York State-run DWSP is doing good work towards identifying harmful forever chemicals in our water supply, and I support their efforts in monitoring, sampling, source tracing, and public education. From dumped contaminated landfill to herbicides sprayed routinely along our creeks and roadways, we need to make every possible effort to remove them from our environment. We also need to explore carbon or reverse osmosis filtration of not only our drinking water, but our wastewater as well, since what we put into our sinks and toilets impacts our environment and other living creatures who share it. The revitalization and expansion of the Woodstock Environmental Commission will be an effective way to research and facilitate ideas like these in order for us to be responsible stewards on this amazing land we call home for a short while. These are just a few of my thoughts. I look forward to discussing them more with you. Thank you. So that was Lori's statement. Now, I want to thank all of you because it was really impressive. This was a long night. We went a little over the 90 minutes, and it was sometimes some pretty heavy, I don't know, you were talking about percentage in this. It went right over my head because I'm not good with numbers. And you sat there and you just gave good attention, and you really, I think, gave them the opportunity to put their best foot forward. So I thank you, I thank the Democratic Committee, and I thank these candidates for stepping up. Have a good night.